July 1987. I'm still at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, keeping the world safe from bad guys. I don't know. But I do know that this is the month that my reading life changed. Two very important authors came into my life and made it a brighter, darker place. One of my favorite writing duos of all time, if not my favorite writing duo of all time, were introduced to me, sort of, in July of 1987. A coworker of mine recommended a book. I believe they lent me their copy to read, and I went out as soon as I was done and bought my own copy because The Cleanup by John Skipp and Craig Spector is that good. Look at that little smeared lipstick on the back there. So this is the first book I read in July of 1987. The Cleanup, John Skipp, Craig Spector. It's the story of Billy Rowe, who is has musical talent, but he's a failed musician, and he's got a failed relationship, and he's sort of failing at life, and he witnesses a murder, which doesn't make things better. But after he sees this murder, and after he deals with the cops, and after he sort of laments how life is and how the world is, a creature comes to him and offers him essentially ultimate power. He can do anything. Billy takes him up on it, and at first he wants to use this power to make the world a better place, to clean up the streets of New York. And he tries, but this is a horror novel, so you know things are going to go wrong. And this, man, I love this book. I've read it multiple times as I continue doing this video series. If you continue watching, you're going to see this book pop up again and again because it is just so fantastic. Now, I did say I was introduced sort of to John Skipp and Craig Spector when I read this book. And I say that because I found out a few years later that I had actually read some of their short stories in Twilight Zone magazine, which was a great magazine. Wish it was still around. Wish I still had the issues that I had when I was younger. But yeah, John Skipp and Craig Spector had some stories in Twilight Zone magazine. I don't know if I didn't register authors' names. I don't know what the deal is. I know Joe Lansdale had some there as well, and I think I was aware of him, but that's all neither here nor there. Even though I'd read some of their short stories, this is really the book that introduced me to this duo, and I love it. And if you haven't read it, find a copy. I don't know if there are new copies available, like new editions, but even if there aren't, find a used copy. If you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of splatterpunk, you've got to read The Cleanup. It's so good. I absolutely love it. Great way to start off the month of July in 1987. I'm going to force myself to move on because I could just keep talking about this and John Skipp and Craig Spector and everything else that they've done. But we'll get to all that later as we move through the months and years. So we will, in this case, just move on to book 2 in July of 1987, which is Taming a Seahorse by Robert B. Parker. This is a Spencer novel. It's essentially a sequel to Ceremony, which I talked a little bit about a couple of videos ago. I read it in May of 1987. Excuse me. So I don't know how to talk about this one without spoiling the previous one, without spoiling Ceremony. Well, all right. I'm going to try this. Let's see. So in Ceremony, Spencer is hired to find teenage runaway April Kyle. In this one, he's hired by somebody else to find April Kyle, who has disappeared again. All right. I think that definitely doesn't spoil anything. I don't think I really need to say anything else that will spoil Ceremony. If you want to, you can look at the comments for the Reading Remembrances video for May of 87, because someone asked me what the ending of Ceremony was. I posted a spoiler warning, and then I talked about it. So you can go look at that. What you really should do is read Ceremony, and then read Taming a Seahorse. But anyway, yeah, so Spencer's hired to once again find April Kyle. It's a great book. You could just read. I don't think they didn't come out back to back, but you could read them back to back. Leave out the ones in the middle, in between, and just read them back to back, and they make a good, slightly longer story than each one individually. That kind of makes sense, right? Anyway, Taming a Seahorse, Robert B. Parker, good Spencer mystery. Book number 3 of July of 1987 is The Death Tower by Maxwell Grant. This is a shadow novel. Obviously, originally a pulp magazine back in the day. I read the paperback reprint, and it's the Death Tower is actually like a 40-story high-rise, and on the top floor is some madman who's stealing people's brains and not always waiting until they're dead, and the Shadow is out to stop him. You know, it's good pulpy fun. It's the Shadow. So there you go. If you like pulps, read this one. I don't know where you're gonna find it. I know there's like reprint magazines that have two Shadow stories in one, reprinting all the old ones. They're kind of cool. They look like the old pulps, and I think they have the old-fashioned illustrations and stuff in them. I like the paperback reprints that I have with really bright, garish covers. But anyway, you can find The Shadow somewhere and read it if you're really that interested. Book 4. We're moving on to Book 4 of July 1987, the last book I read in July of 1987, and that is Robert Adams' Book of Alternate Worlds. And I have to read from my list here because it is edited by Robert Adams, Martin H. Greenberg, and Pamela Crippen Adams. It's an anthology of alternate world stories. Technically isn't most fiction alternate worlds? But there is a story here where like World War II started in 1974, or took place in 74, however you want to put it. So that's definitely alternate world. There's stories with parallel worlds and reincarnation of werewolves and all sorts of different stuff. And I suppose like most anthologies, at least for me, the stories are going to be hit and miss. I don't know that I've ever written an anthology that was all bad stories. I don't think I've ever written an anthology that was all great stories. It's always just some are better than others, and that's the case here as well. But, it's worth reading if you like just a plethora of different kinds of stories. And that's it. That's all I've got for July of 1987. Working backwards now, Robert Adams' Book of Alternate Worlds, The Death Tower, Taming a Seahorse, and The Cleanup. I cannot praise this book enough. I want to reread it right now. Unfortunately, I have other things I have to read. But, man, just pulling this off the shelf, looking it over, I want to reread it. It's so good. So good. All right, but that's it. That's all I have for July of 1987. I'm going to try. I just want to keep praising this book, but I shan't. It'll come up again, and I'll just gush some more. So that's it. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please leave them in the comments below. We can talk spoilers in the comments. Just post a spoiler warning because we try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. This isn't the Low Budget Review Show, is it? It's Reading Remembrances. But I have another show called Low Budget Review Show, just in case you didn't know. Come on, who doesn't know about that? More people watch those than watch these. Anyway, we try to be polite across all my shows here on YouTube. So we post spoiler warnings. Please like, share, and subscribe. And that's all I got this time. So until next time, read more books.